So today was a very big day for the 49ers and those of us who follow the team. Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch had their end of season press conference. And I've covered this team since 2017. So I've covered the entirety of this regime. And I've witnessed several shifts. There's never been anything quite tectonic, but in the NFL, you evolve. You adapt or die in the NFL. The league is this constant chess match, and you have to be able to make the counter moves that counter other counter moves. It's a never ending battle in that regard. And of all the shifts that I've covered with the 49ers, I think the one that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have outlined since the end of this 2024 season. It's just been a couple days, but the one that they've outlined and have begun to execute and described at the postseason press conference today has been the most significant. So I titled this video, The Biggest Shift of the Shanahan-Lynch Era. On the surface, the really quick summary is that there are going to be 3 new coordinators next year, and there are only 3 phases of the game. There's going to be a new offensive coordinator, there's going to be a new defensive coordinator, and there's going to be a new special teams coordinator. But even despite the big shift, the 49ers also doubled down today on their streams of success. They doubled down on Brock Purdy. That wasn't unexpected. We expected that. Anybody who actually has followed Brock Purdy objectively knows that he's a very good quarterback that's going to make top market money. I don't know if it's going to be exactly at the top of the market or a little bit less. I honestly don't care, and I don't think anybody should care outside of Brock Purdy and his family. It's going to be a lot of money, and the 49ers are going to structure it in a way that works for them. And John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan doubled down on that because it's been very successful for them. I mean, the quickest way for them to be run out of town, to get fired, would be for them to not double down on Brock Purdy. So today they did that. They doubled down on Deebo Samuel. That's going to be interesting. We'll talk a little bit about that. They talked about Dre Greenlaw and the entire process of determining whether or not he's going to be back next season. So there are major shifts in the way that the 49ers are going to be organizing leadership of the various phases of the game, but there are still strong, steady undercurrents, and those undercurrents are based in the talent of this team. They've got a whole lot of good players that the 49ers are standing by. They'd be idiots to not stand by Brock Purdy. They'd be idiots to let somebody like Deebo Samuel walk out of the building without any compensation in return. This doesn't mean that they're stuck hard and fast by any particular player, except for Brock Purdy. I think that the quarterback position does require a little bit more deference, but it doesn't mean that they're in the talent acquisition business, and they're clearly sticking to their guns of making sure that good players stay in the building. Accumulate as many good players as possible. Make sure they stay in the building, or if they're not going to be staying in the building, make sure that you're compensated either in standard draft picks or compensatory draft picks, or through cap space that opens up so that way you can make more prudent expenditures elsewhere. It's all a very complicated balancing act, and that's what we're going to talk about in this 49ers update. I'm going to play some clips. We're going to go through what Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch said today. I thought there were several interesting moments. I thought there were several nuggets and good pieces of news that we can use to further the discussion around the 49ers and how they're going to build out this team over the course of the 2025 calendar year. First, though, today I was headed down to Santa Clara. So I live in San Francisco. I'm commuting down 101, and I had never seen this before. I'm well south of the airport, and there was a convoy of San Francisco Fire Department trucks headed down 101, and they were obviously heading down to LA. I mean, this kind of an emotional moment. We have really good friends whose house burned down. It was confirmed today in Pacific Palisades. I know there are a lot of 49ers fans down in Southern California in Pacific Palisades who have probably been affected by these fires. And the fires are all around the LA area. It's not just the Palisades. And, regardless of whether somebody's a 49ers fan or a viewer of this channel or not, it's just a human thing. What is happening down there in LA is horrific. Everyone that is affected by this or tangentially affected by this is in my prayers, in my family's prayers. And I saw, the San Francisco Fire Department heading down 101 South to go help out in LA any way they could. And, it was just a reminder as I was heading down to the facility today that as humans, we're all in this together in these tough moments. And, we often talk about the rivalry between the cities of San Francisco and Los Angeles, that there is no rivalry right now. Everyone is on the same page to get through, what was a horrific night in LA with those fires. So prayers out to everybody down in Southern California. And hopefully everybody is in a safe spot down there. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that before we delve into our show here talking about the 49ers. In fact, John Lynch today, when he sat down for the press conference, before he took any questions, he made sure that a similar sentiment was passed along to the folks down in LA. He said it's been hard to focus at some of these postseason meetings for the 49ers, the exit interviews, because of the pictures that we've seen coming down there from LA. So wanted to share that on this day. If anybody is down in LA and wants to share in the comments section right now, maybe you're away from your house and your house is gone and you're watching this show to take your mind off of things. Hopefully we can provide that kind of respite for you as we discuss the 49ers today. So, want to get through this update. There were several moments today that were worthy of discussion. One of my questions to Kyle Shanahan involved Klay Kubiak. Klay Kubiak is technically the 49ers pass game specialist. And Kyle Shanahan let him call a couple of the games in the preseason, play call in the preseason. He was the guy that was talking on the radio to the quarterback, who obviously has a radio in his helmet. And then during the week 18 game at Arizona, it was Klay Kubiak who again got play calling duties for the 49ers. Well, obviously Shanahan has picked Kubiak out of everybody else on the staff to give this opportunity, the play calling opportunity, something that I noticed over the course of the season. So I asked Kyle about it. I asked, first I said, is he planning to make any changes, any significant changes to the offensive staff? Because we've seen massive changes, a massive shift at the top of the defensive staff and at the top of the special team staff. He's removed both coordinators, Nick Sorensen and Brian Schneider. He's obviously not going to remove himself from the top of the offensive staff, and the offense performed much better than the defense and the special teams this year. But after any season, especially after a losing season, there's a good chance of at least some significant shift happening. So I asked Kyle Shanahan if there will be significant shifts as part of the offensive staff. And then I specifically zeroed in on Klay Kubiak, who did get the play calling responsibilities in some of the games that didn't count toward the final standings this season. And listen to Kyle Shanahan's answer about Klay Kubiak's promotion to offensive coordinator.
I thought he did an awesome job, and Klay's role is going to be the same as it's been, which has been the offensive coordinator. He just hasn't had that title yet. I mean, Klay's done as much as anyone on offense for these last 2 years. So this was his second year doing that, and he gets better and better each year at it. Just hasn't had the official title yet, and now he'll get the official title, which he more than deserves. But it's more about recognizing what he's already been doing and doing at a high level.
So this is really interesting to me because Kyle Shanahan did two things. The most noticeable thing that he did was that he downplayed the promotion of Klay Kubiak to offensive coordinator. He said, it's just a title. We're rewarding him for his hard work. But the second thing that he did is that he answered my question by saying that he's promoting Klay Kubiak to offensive coordinator. If this was no big deal at all, the 49ers wouldn't have done it. I said earlier today that they do not pass around promotions like candy. You earn these promotions. That's been the track record of how Shanahan has managed his coaching staff since 2017. And prior to Klay Kubiak earning this promotion, there was only one other offensive staffer who had been named offensive coordinator under Kyle Shanahan, and that was Mike McDaniel. And that was only for the 2021 season. McDaniel had been with them the whole time from the start of the operation in 2017, but it wasn't until 2021 that he was named offensive coordinator. He had to put in several years of work. Klay Kubiak has been helping out a lot with the 49ers quarterbacks. He's been working out a lot with somebody like Brock Purdy, somebody like Sam Darnold last year, who obviously has turned into a good quarterback in this league, now with the Minnesota Vikings. I think that Klay Kubiak's track record has been extremely impressive for the 49ers. Fans might not quite notice because he's not the one putting his fingerprints on the play calling, but his effect is very much there. He's helping Kyle Shanahan game plan. The 49ers have maintained an efficient offense despite the fact that they dealt with so many injury issues this year, despite some of the shortcomings that they had along the interior offensive line. The bottom line is that Klay Kubiak has graduated to a level of trust, at least in job title, that is reminiscent of the level of trust that Mike McDaniel had when he was the offensive coordinator in 2021. And I think this is what Kyle Shanahan needs. I've been very critical this season of Kyle Shanahan's play calling at times. He's ranked in the bottom half of the league in terms of play calling grade. Steve Patton does a great job. Patton Analytics online. They take a look at the amount of motions, the unpredictability of an offense. Shanahan consistently had ranked amongst the top of play callers in the National Football League. But this season, he ranked, as far as play caller rating went, a little bit below average. And he also did not really create a lot of easy plays for his quarterback, Brock Purdy. Have a look at this graphic right here. I think this is a good illustration. This is exactly what I'm talking about from Patton Analytics. So this is play caller ratings compared to easy button usage. I'll explain what we have on the screen. X-axis is the overall play calling score that Patton Analytics calculates. You can go to their Twitter to read the whole methodology. I'm not going to bore you with it right now. But in the past, Kyle Shanahan has been on the right side of the average line. He's been over here, somewhere on the right. The vertical axis is easy button percentage. How many screen passes does a coach call? How many play action passes does a coach call? How many RPOs does he call? How often does he make it easy for his quarterback? Look at Ben Johnson of the Lions. He's in the upper right. So Ben Johnson has a really good play calling score. He's further to the right, and he's also pressed the easy button for Jared Goff more often than any other offensive coordinator has pressed the easy button for his respective quarterback. Shanahan has typically lived in the upper right. The guys in the upper right are Ben Johnson, Sean Payton, very respected mind. He's made life easy for Bo Nix. Andy Reid has made life as easy as possible for Patrick Mahomes. Cliff Kingsbury has made life as easy as possible for Jaden Daniels. Matt LaFleur has made life as easy as possible for Jordan Love. Greg Roman, remember him? He's made life as easy as possible. He's in the upper right here with Justin Herbert. Even over here, maybe not easy button percentage, but really good play calling score coming out of Buffalo for Josh Allen. Well, guess who's not in this positive territory? This guy down here. This is the 49ers logo. Kyle Shanahan. He's got a slightly below average play calling score, and the easy button percentage has been the second lowest in the league. So as Ben Johnson is giving Jared Goff play action, screen passes about 20% of the time, Kyle Shanahan's only doing the same for Brock Purdy about 12% of the time. He's getting about roughly half the easy button percentage opportunities as Jared Goff. And, some of this is going to be related to personnel. We can't just say, okay, well, Kyle Shanahan has completely lost his fastball. It's all on Kyle Shanahan. Everything is interconnected in the sport of football, right? So if the 49ers don't have Christian McCaffrey on the field, it's going to be a lot harder to call some of these screen passes because McCaffrey is a master of getting open in the short game. If Brandon Ayuk is not on the football field as your X wide receiver, it's going to be a lot harder to generate space to call some of your favorite plays, some of the easy plays, quote unquote, because he's not going to be generating that defensive attention. So you have to take these rankings with a grain of salt because everything's interconnected, and football is one of the most complex sports that we can study because it takes all 11 against all 11 of the other team. But then it's more than just the 11 because the play caller is the one that's dictating how things are going to be working from an X's and O's perspective. So by no means am I going out here and saying that, oh my God, Shanahan, it's all him. He's regressed from upper right down to the bottom. But this is something to chew on. And I think that when we watch this offense this year, even when Christian McCaffrey was unavailable, when they did hit their stride, they were throwing more screen passes. They were making things more easy for Brock Purdy. And when they weren't in their stride, those were parts of the offense that were very curiously gone or very curiously happening at a much lower rate. The wildest part of the year came against Detroit. And this is, I think it's good because it happened late in the season. So it gave us a very crystal clear picture of where I think Kyle Shanahan can improve. But it also showcased the prodigious play calling ability that Kyle Shanahan does have. He and Purdy combined, the Shanahan-Purdy duo combined, eviscerated Detroit's defense for about 3/4 of that game. The balance was awesome. Purdy was at like 12 or 13 yards per attempt. Between what Shanahan called and what Brock Purdy executed, the 49ers had that combination that can win a Super Bowl. But then came the fourth quarter of that game against Detroit, and all of a sudden, Kyle Shanahan got extremely pass happy. And I talked about this in the instant reaction after the game. But what ended up happening is the 49ers ended up throwing 16 straight passes to close that game. The balance that had led them to this prolific performance through 3/4, they just abandoned it. And they abandoned it before the game got out of hand. It was abandoned even when it was a one-score game. In fact, there was a stretch there of 10 straight passes to open the fourth quarter. On the 10th straight pass, Kirby Joseph was waiting. He didn't even buy the play action fake because he's just reading Brock Purdy's eyes, and he picked the football off. I think that Kyle Shanahan called both his best game. I mean, he was awesome over 3/4. And I think it should have showed everybody that this guy still has it. I mean, look what Aaron Glenn and Detroit was able to do against Sam Darnold, Kevin O'Connell, and Minnesota the very next week. They confused the hell out of them. 49ers weren't confused for 3+ quarters against Detroit. So it showed us the potential ceiling and the positives of Kyle Shanahan. But it also went out and illustrated the blind spot. And that blind spot happened in the fourth quarter when they were just passing over and over again. And I've said this a few times now, but I think this is the most involved discussion that we've had about it. When you are coaching a football game, even if you're a genius, even if you're a great play caller, and I think Kyle Shanahan over the years has proven to be a really damn good play caller, you can run into blind spots. The flow of the game, it's really easy to get absorbed in it when you're sitting down there on the line on the sideline, and the line of scrimmage is right in front of you. You don't have that bird's eye view. There's a lot happening. Sometimes flags are flying. Sometimes guys like Jawan Jennings are getting tangled up with opposing cornerbacks, and you're yelling at the officials. It's chaos down on a football field. And I think it is very possible to lose track of some damaging tendencies like 16 straight passes, or in the case of Brock Purdy's interception against the Lions, 10 straight passes. That is why it is so important to have very trusted lieutenants who can remind you of the big picture and who have commanded enough respect within the organizational structure of offensive communication to be able to interject at key times. And I think that Klay Kubiak has graduated into that circle of trust. And I don't think that his promotion to offensive coordinator is meaningless. I think it's a whole lot more complicated than who's actually calling the plays, who's actually radioing the plays to the quarterback, because only one person can do that. But the fact that Shanahan has given Kubiak the same title as Mike McDaniel, I do think is significant as far as the offensive hierarchy and power structure of making sure that the 49ers finish games into the future by staying balanced. They were a really good offense despite a lot of injuries in 2021 under Mike McDaniel. So good that Mike McDaniel was able to find his way into a promotion with the Miami Dolphins. He became the head coach there in 2022. And if Kubiak is on any sort of similar track, and if they have a good year next year, I think he'll be on a very similar track to Mike McDaniel. Well, I could see why the respect has grown within the course of the 49ers organization, and I think that can mean only good things for this offense and for balance and for a sense of sanity at the top. So I know this has been a really nuanced discussion. This is not just your standard, okay, let's fire the coordinator and bring somebody else in. I think that the 49ers offense was in a complicated spot because they still did a lot of good things this year. They still have a really good quarterback, but they have some fracture points and there were some blind spots that they're going to have to address moving forward. So I think it was going to take a nuanced, deft approach to take the next step coaching-wise for the offense. And the promotion of Klay Kubiak to offensive coordinator strategically, to me, is a really, really interesting way of going about it for the 49ers. All right, next thing, Dre Greenlaw's future. There have been social media posts. There's been chatter from, this is Fred Warner's wife, Sydney Warner. It seemed to imply that Dre Greenlaw did not know, or that seemed to imply that Dre Greenlaw did know and knew that he wasn't coming back to the 49ers. Then there was a comment from Dre's fiance on one of those posts that said that they're all praying that he does come back to the 49ers. So it's like, which is it? Well, the truth is always somewhere in between. The truth is we don't know, and the 49ers don't know either, because we don't even know what defensive system they're going to run next year. I'll get to that in a little bit. First, let's listen to Kyle Shanahan's answer about Dre Greenlaw and the future.
We don't even know, guys. We haven't spent much time together yet. I've had 2 days with exit interviews with players and coaches. Players don't know either, and that's what's hard for players. They're under contracts. They know when their contract's going to run up. That's an emotional time for players, for their families, for wives, girlfriends, whoever it is, kids, just like it is for coaches when I can't always tell them exactly what their future is going to be the day the season ends. It's tied to a lot of other people, and I know I've been on that side. I know wives are texting you all day asking what the deal is, and they don't believe that you really don't have an answer yet. And I know what they look like when you walk them through the door and they're like, what are we doing with our lives? And you're like, I don't really know. There's a lot of things that you want to solve so fast for people that is stressful for people sitting in our chairs. But you can't solve everything at once. A lot of things are tied together. And when you hear things like that, or Greenlaw, like, we're doing everything in the world we can to bring Greenlaw back. And we're not into losing really good players who are unbelievable people. So we're going to do everything we can to never lose really good players who are good people. But that's also a very hard challenge, very hard. And that's something that you don't just talk about in one meeting. There's too many things that connect to that. Draft, free agency, roster, years, all that stuff. And that takes weeks, months to decide.
I think this is a good lesson for fans. Dre Greenlaw remains under contract with the 49ers through the end of this league year. This league year doesn't end until early to mid-March. So Greenlaw is still a 49er right now. A decision doesn't have to be made over the course of the next few weeks. We're about 2 months away from when a decision is going to need to be made on this matter. And people want now. They want certainty at any given moment. They want this guy fired, and then they think that that's going to work, or they want this guy re-signed, and they think everything's going to be okay. That's not the reality of the NFL. It is, especially on a crowded roster. The 49ers have a lot of star players and a lot of highly paid players. And especially when you're dealing with a player who has an uncertain resume. And the reason I say that is Dre Greenlaw only played 34 snaps this year. They were 34 really good snaps. But again, he only played 34 snaps coming off the Achilles. There's a lot of question marks here. What is he going to be worth on the open market? What exactly is he worth to the 49ers? I mean, one of the biggest variables in all of this is what kind of scheme are the 49ers going to be running next year defensively? They currently don't have a defensive coordinator. They're about to go into an exhaustive searching process to find who's going to be the right man to lead their defense, given not only the personnel that's there right now, but the personnel they may be able to acquire over the course of this offseason. So it's like a really complicated jigsaw puzzle. You can't definitively answer if Dre Greenlaw is going to be here or not when we're only on piece number 3 of a 1,000-piece puzzle. Every single day, they're going to be adding a piece. They're going to be watching tape. They're going to be scouting college prospects. They're going to be evaluating where they are in the draft versus other teams. They're going to be looking at the salary cap. They're going to be negotiating with Brock Purdy, trying to determine the financial structure of that deal. As they get more clarity as to which direction that's going, they'll know exactly how much money they could allot toward Dre Greenlaw. At that point, you might also, have had enough conversations with agents around the league and gotten enough of that intel to potentially know what Dre Greenlaw might command on the open market. Dre himself will have to determine, what the price point of him staying in California is going to be versus maybe going somewhere like Texas. He went to school in Arkansas. I mean, I think you get the idea. There are like a million variables here. And I think that it's okay to say we don't know if Dre Greenlaw is going to be back next year. It's okay to be smart in our analysis. You don't just yell in one way or the other. As Kyle Shanahan said, they want Dre Greenlaw back. They're going to do what they can to have him back because they are not in the business of letting good players who are also great people out of the building. And Dre Greenlaw qualifies for that, but it also is much more complicated than just either retaining Dre Greenlaw or not retaining him. Greenlaw was a very important piece of the 49ers defense in years prior to this. This year is a very important missing piece of the 49ers defense. And we talk about the firing of Nick Sorensen. Well, not fired. I misspoke there. Let me correct that. Brian Schneider was fired. That contract was terminated. Nick Sorensen wasn't. He's still under contract to be a coach for the 49ers, but they just said he's not going to be the defensive coordinator anymore. They're hoping to retain Sorensen on the staff in a different role. He's a candidate for special teams coordinator. Remember that he did a great job as the ball father for the 49ers, the turnover margin czar in the past for San Francisco. Maybe he returns to that role. But Kyle Shanahan talked a little bit about why this whole Sorensen experiment didn't work out. And that gave us a little bit of insight into what the 49ers might be looking at regarding their new defensive coordinator from 2025 and beyond.
The scheme that we've had here, I think it's one of the hardest things to go to when you got the right guys in the right spots. But I do think people adjust to schemes, and I think you have to adjust too, depending on your personnel. And I think that was a tougher thing for us this year. Just going into the season, it was a little bit harder than past seasons. And some of the injuries we had, I think, made it really tough for Nick. And I thought he got better trying to adjust and do different things. But I do think that's something that definitely, I'm not saying you got to change schemes, but you have to have the ability, the history, and the knowledge of how to change some stuff up when you're in some certain situations. And I think that we do need that more going forward.
So Kyle Shanahan, and I'm going to have a big piece coming out on the San Francisco Standard tomorrow that really gets into the weeds of the 49ers defensive coordinator search and the different schemes and the different ways they can take this. But because I think the main quote today from Kyle Shanahan was that everything is on the table. In the past, not everything had been on the table. Yeah, sure. They were curious about Bill Belichick's availability. They were curious about Steve Spagnuolo's availability, but those were Hail Mary shots in the dark. Those weren't actual probable outcomes. The probable outcome in the past, and it had overwhelmingly been the 49ers thought that it would go in that direction, was that they were going to keep the same defensive structure and just make tweaks along the way. I think there's a chance that we see big-time structural changes over the course of this offseason. And Kyle Shanahan acknowledged that today. That's why I say that the biggest shift of the Shanahan-Lynch era is here. And he mentioned there that, Nick Sorensen, he likes the scheme and he likes some of the work that Nick Sorensen did, and there were good games. But sometimes, especially when a lot of players are hurt, it's going to take a little bit of departure from what you usually do to be able to succeed in this league. I think we saw a great example of that with Aaron Glenn and Detroit. I mean, that was as close to a must-win game as there can be without it being a must-win game. Difference between the number 1 and the number 5 seed was at stake for the Detroit Lions against the Minnesota Vikings. And Detroit's defense is still beleaguered. We saw the 49ers work that defense for the vast majority of the game 6 days prior to that. So Detroit was coming off of a short week, and they had to figure out a way to make it work with their defense. And what do? Well, they started dialing up crazy blitz packages. I mean, Aaron Glenn went ham with the blitz packages against the Minnesota Vikings, and they worked. They confused the hell out of Sam Darnold, and what ended up happening is the Minnesota Vikings made way too many missed plays in the red zone. The chaos created by the blitzes of Aaron Glenn worked, and the Detroit Lions were able to overcome their injuries and win. And Kyle Shanahan feels that the 49ers didn't have enough of that adaptability on the defensive side of the ball with an inexperienced coordinator like Nick Sorensen. So he wants to repair this. I think one of the biggest things to watch for the 49ers moving forward is going to be their blitz rate and their blitz success. Try to get this on the screen so you could have an easier time seeing it. It's a vertically oriented graph, and maybe this will work. I don't know if we're not really getting all here. I'll be able to slide back and forth with this. This is the NFL defenses, the number of blitzers. So you got no blitzer, 1 blitzer, 2+ blitzers, and it's divided accordingly. So the total amount of blitzes is going to be what sorts this top to bottom. The Minnesota Vikings with Brian Flores and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with Todd Bowles, those two teams blitz more than everybody else in the NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs are in the top 5 as well. Look at where the 49ers were, bottom 3. Jacksonville, Indianapolis, San Francisco. They don't blitz a lot. But what's even more interesting is the amount of times that the 49ers blitz 2 or more men. It's right here. I'm circling it with my cursor. 1.7%. So Sorensen brought 2 or more rushers, fewer than every other coordinator in the league. And the 49ers had times their pass rush was beleaguered when Nick Bosa was out. Javon Hargrave, after week 3, wasn't available for the 49ers. I mean, the 49ers needed more juice in the pass rush. And especially in the game against the Lions. I mean, you could tell in that game that they needed to mix something up. And Sorensen tried to a couple times, but then the Lions would just burn the blitz anyway. The blitz wasn't sophisticated enough. So I think what you hear Kyle Shanahan talking about with this new defensive coordinator, it's going to have to be somebody who has enough experience to be able to win outside of his own home territory, outside of his own usual structure at key moments. I mean, the 49ers were really bad in a couple places on defense this year. They're really bad on third down, and they're really bad in the red zone. Those are the money downs, the third down and the red zone. That's when you're going to get the best shot from opposing offensive coordinators. So you better counter with your best shot. And if your best shot is not good enough to beat their best shot on those money downs, you're going to lose a lot of games. You're going to drop from number 10 to number 26 in defense. That's how the 49ers rank, 26 out of 32 teams. So I'm looking at the 49ers' ability to turn on a good blitz game moving forward, because I don't think they're ever going to have a D-line as good as they did in 2019. You can't count on that. They only had 1 sack from a non-D lineman this year. It was the 1 sack from Fred Warner. Nobody else from the back end registered a sack. That's how anemic their blitzing was. They didn't blitz a lot, and they didn't blitz effectively. And they're going to have to figure out a way to, I think, blitz more, and definitely find out a way to blitz more effectively. When Saleh was at his best, he incorporated a little bit of a blitz game with Fred Warner, then with K'Wan Williams. And that was mainly the Shark blitz in 2021. That was DeMeco Ryans when he found his stride, because he didn't start off hot as the defensive coordinator. 49ers struggled early that season, but then K'Wan Williams started coming in with the Shark blitz. That was a nickel blitz that was so well timed, so well executed. That's the kind of stuff the 49ers are going to need. So are they going to go? They could go to the Brian Flores tree. There's a couple assistant coaches with the Minnesota Vikings, or the team at the very top of this list. They can go for a couple of assistants there if they want to go blitz heavy. But I don't necessarily think they need to go all the way to the top of the list. Even a defense with Sala and Jeff Ulbrich fingerprints on it was relatively middle of the pack when it came to blitz rate versus what the 49ers were doing. 49ers blitzed only 19.3% of the time. No blitzer 80.7% of the time for San Francisco. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at run defense because San Francisco's run defense was not up to par. Number 29 in the league. They fired Wilkes after the run defense was number 26 in the league. It has not been above average over the past 2 years, and that's something that the 49ers absolutely must rectify. This 49ers update is brought to you by Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/gameon today. That's rocketmoney.com/gameon. rocketmoney.com/gameon. Now we're going to move to the 49ers discussion of Brock Purdy today. Listen to the strength of this full commitment to number 13 at the quarterback position.
Really get this going and play some football, and that starts with Brock. Like, Brock is the leader of our team. I've loved these 3 years with Brock. I plan on being with Brock here the whole time I'm here. So, like, Brock's been a stud. He's a guy I got a lot of confidence in, and just as a human. But it starts with what he's done on the field these last 2.5 years, and we're capable of winning a Super Bowl with him. We just almost did, and I know he's capable of getting the Niners Super Bowl in the future.
Listen to that. Kyle Shanahan straight up just goes for it. There was no equivocation in his words. We can win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. We've almost done it. And I think we can win a Super Bowl with him in the future. John Lynch also said that he straight up, you could quote him. He said that Brock Purdy played at a high level this year. This is what I've been trying to tell everybody over the course of this season. There are way too many prisoner of the moment reactions to Brock Purdy. And every single quarterback will have a tough throw. Every single quarterback will throw a few picks. It is about what they do in the big picture. Brock Purdy has ranked as the top quarterback in the league over the past 2 seasons. Ever since he's entered the league, so 2.5 seasons, he has been the most efficient quarterback in the league. When we objectively measure things, he is there at number 1. I'm not saying he's the best quarterback in the league, but he's definitely one of the best quarterbacks in the league, because even this year, when he had a lot not go his way, that definitely wasn't an Avengers come save the day kind of year. It was just the opposite. But even this year, when there wasn't a whole lot going his way, Brock Purdy finished ranked number 7 in QBR. So, as I said earlier, it'd be idiotic if the 49ers didn't commit to Brock Purdy. Thankfully, YouTube experts and Twitter trolls aren't running the 49ers, because they wouldn't be doing a very good job if they were running the 49ers. But San Francisco and the front office sees the truth in this situation. The facts are speaking really loudly, and they're not afraid to go out and proclaim this. They're not in this, skeptical mission of going out and saying, well, pretending like Brock Purdy is worse than he actually is to try to depress his contract value. They know the truth here. The truth is that any debate about Brock Purdy's contract is a fake debate. It's people just posturing on the internet. It's people talking about $60 million a year, $55 million a year, $62 million a year. You don't know what any of that means. Every single person that is going out there and talking about X million per year doesn't understand the contractual numbers that they're talking about. This is really complicated salary cap stuff that is way deeper than a shallow surface level APY, average per year number. It is about structure of the deal. It's going to be about fitting it under the salary cap roof for the 49ers. And most of all, it's going to be about the quarterback market. The 49ers are going to be bound by the quarterback market. If somebody like Dak Prescott, who's less accomplished than Brock Purdy, worse across the range of statistics than Brock Purdy, worse across the range of film than Brock Purdy, if somebody like Dak Prescott's at the top of the market in APY, by the way, it doesn't mean as much, but if he's at the top of the market, then Brock Purdy's going to be at the top of the market. Fully guaranteed money is probably the best way to gauge this. Joe Burrow is at the top of the market in terms of fully guaranteed money behind Deshaun Watson, but I don't consider Watson to be he's an outlier. He hadn't set the market. It hasn't turned into precedent. So you look in that 140 million range or wherever it is in fully guaranteed money. That's the metric that's going to determine where exactly this contract ranks. But even that one won't be the be all end all as far as determining how affordable this is for the 49ers. It's going to be all about structure. And the 49ers are confident that they're going to be able to reach a deal with Brock Purdy that has the structure that allows them to build the rest of the football team. And Brock Purdy's camp, based on what he said the other day on Monday, they're confident they're going to be able to reach a deal with the 49ers that fits under the structure of what the 49ers need to build the team around him. And that's all you need. All the noise doesn't matter. All you need is those two sides to agree on that. And there seems to be really big confidence from both sides that that can indeed happen. Shout out to my cousin Antonio. He's in the mission visiting from Bakersfield. Shout out to Bakersfield. I think he's almost here. So as soon as we get through this last little clip, I'm going to have to get going. We're going to go out in the mission. It's going to be fun. So Antonio, big 49ers fan. He's about as tall as me, by the way. We're the two tallest people in that Lombardi family. So Antonio is here. We're saying hello to Antonio, and we're going to have to get going pretty soon. You guys can let me know where in the mission should I take him to get a couple drinks tonight. I have a couple places in mind, but if you have any thoughts, you can toss them into the comment section. Finally, last piece here today is Lynch's big moment. This was pretty cool. Tim Kawakami, a great coworker over at the San Francisco Standard, was asking Kyle Shanahan about special teams. And I thought John Lynch, this is a cool stabilizing moment from John Lynch. I'll probably make a separate video about this. He jumped in and he protected Kyle Shanahan a little bit. I just thought it was good teamwork you saw on stage there between Shanahan and Lynch. Give us a little bit of a glimpse into how the 49ers operate at the highest executive levels.
Widely noted, you don't take a real detailed interest in special teams. Does that need to change a little, Kyle? Can you get more involved? Do you need to get more involved?
I mean, what do you mean by I don't take interest in special teams?
Well, you say you're not watching the kicker tryouts and that kind of.
Well,
I know they're offhand.
Let me help Kyle there. I would tell you Kyle spends an inordinate amount of time with all phases of our team. Special teams is extremely important in the way we construct our rosters. The time is there. Now in kicking, neither of us are kicking specialists, so we don't sit here and profess to know everything about kicking and things of that nature. But the time issue, I'm sorry to interrupt, Kyle, but he spends plenty of time there.
I just don't BS you guys.
Yeah.
That's it. Oh, you turned it around on me there. But no, I just don't BS you guys with that stuff. But to say, we spent some heavy draft picks on special teams players, which I think is an investment. We spent some salary cap on guys. Bringing guys like George Odom, having Flanagan Fowles here these last couple of years. That's bringing back. Those are special teams decisions. Spent a third-round pick on a kicker. Making special teams changes is why special teams is important to me, because we do work at it. But it's wasn't good enough this year. I don't put that just on Brian by any means. Losing your kicker, losing your punter, when injuries do affect the roster, especially offense and defensively, what it did affect the most was special teams. And I think that was unfair to Brian and a tough situation to put him in. But I do think it's an avenue we can get better in, and you can't change the whole thing out. And so Brian ends up being the fall guy for that. And I really appreciate him. He did have a real good 3 years here and worked his tail off and was very loyal to us and is a very good coach. And he'll bounce back on his feet, and we'll be going against him soon, I'm sure. But no, special teams is part of football, and everything part of football is extremely important to us.
So there's so much interesting stuff there. I highlight Lynch's moment because I feel that he hadn't gotten enough credit over the years for being a stabilizing force behind the scenes. And we saw it actually work in real life there. Kyle Shanahan a little flustered. What do you mean? I don't care about special teams. Lynch jumps in. That's the job of the general manager. That's why Lynch and Shanahan have worked so well in tandem. That's why teams like Tennessee are so dysfunctional, because the GM and the coach have been hired on separate tracks. They never really get along. One guy gets fired one year, the other guy gets fired the next year. You never have that matching GM head coach partnership. So the 49ers have it there, and I think you saw it there. And, we could finish with the talk of special teams. Kyle Shanahan's right. They actually have made big investments in special teams. I mean, you can't say that they don't care about special teams and then also complain about them using a 3rd-round pick on Jake Moody and a 4th-round pick on Mitch Wishnowsky, a kicker and a punter. They also signed George Odom, as Kyle Shanahan said. But there's also the data points of Brian Schneider and Richard Hightower. Schneider was a really good special teams coordinator, or at least he had good results in 10 years with the Seattle Seahawks. Richard Hightower, who the 49ers didn't renew after 2021, just put up the number 5 special teams unit with the Chicago Bears this season. Shanahan himself said that Schneider was simply the fall guy, that it wasn't all on Brian Schneider. I think the issue, and I think this could be something that makes 49ers fans optimistic. Kyle Shanahan, Tim is right. Tim, in his question, he's just going off of how Kyle Shanahan has talked about special teams before. Prior to this press conference, Kyle had spoken of, well, I'm just making sure the special teams is not losing the game for us. Even though he has invested resources into it, the way that Kyle Shanahan has talked publicly about special teams has made it seem like a little bit of an afterthought. And I think subconsciously that can bleed into the organizational psyche. So I thought the answer today was important. I thought John Lynch's interjection was important. I think maybe that's the sign of a shift, a sign that the 49ers are going to start putting a little bit more subconscious emphasis, if you will, on special teams. And I think that could be the key for this team to actually have a passable special teams unit. It was all part of the biggest shift of the Shanahan-Lynch era, the ability to be flexible, the flexibility they're showing as far as defensive thinking, the flexibility that I think they're showing as far as special teams thinking. You saw a lot of it in that answer. And of course, the offensive coordinator, Klay Kubiak, named today, only the 2nd time that Kyle Shanahan has done that during his tenure. Everybody hit that subscribe button. Time to head out into the mission. It's been a great season. I think I deserve a drink right now. So I'm going to get a drink, get a burrito. It's going to be good. Let's call this the end of 2024 49ers coverage. We've wrapped it up. That was the final press conference. Thank you, everybody, for being along for the ride. It was a lot of fun. Don't worry, I'm not taking any time off. We're delving right into 2025 the next time that we talk. See ya.